It's totally hopeless to compete with us on training foundation models. You shouldn't try, right? Ouch. Those were the notoriously blunt words of OpenAI CEO Sam Altman when he visited India back in June 2023. He was essentially telling an entire nation of brilliant engineers, look, you just don't have the hundreds of millions of dollars needed to play at the base layer of AI. Now, most people heard that and thought, well, fair point. That's the harsh reality. But one insanely ambitious founder, he heard that as a direct, personal challenge. So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into what we can call the Icarus pivot. We are going to unpack the incredibly dramatic rise, the brutal economic reality check, and finally, the highly pragmatic rebirth of India's fastest ever AI unicorn, Krutrim AI. We're looking at what exactly happens when a massive, unstoppable entrepreneurial vision smashes headfirst into the billion-dollar economics of the global AI race. Okay, moving into Section 1, India's full-stack AI dream.
The vision here, driven by founder Bhavish Aggarwal, was, honestly, staggering. He didn't just want to build a cool new app. He wanted to build an entire AI-first economy for 1.4 billion people, specifically designed from the ground up for non-English speakers. And man, Krutrim, which actually means artificial in Sanskrit, by the way, they absolutely sprinted out of the gate. They launched in early 2023, and by that December, they were already announcing a massive 2 trillion token-based language model. And just 45 days later, bam, a $1 billion valuation, literally India's fastest AI unicorn in history.
But here's the kicker. They weren't just slapping a user interface on a standard chatbot. No, they promised a true, comprehensive, full-stack ecosystem. They wanted to own the whole shebang. We're talking their own foundation models, custom-designed silicon chips, which they called Bodhi 1 and 2 to actually rival Nvidia, plus the enterprise compute infrastructure and the consumer apps. Aggarwal even threw down a personal investment of 10,000 crore rupees. The goal? To basically replicate a decade of US hardware and software dominance in, just a couple of years. Which brings us to Section 2, the foundation model reality check. Because, as you probably know, pitching a full-stack ecosystem in a boardroom is one thing, but actually executing it on the world stage, yeah, that's an entirely different beast. Fast forward to February 2024. Krutrim launches its public chatbot beta, claiming it beat GPT-4 on local language benchmarks. This was supposed to be their massive crowning moment, but it was kind of a PR disaster. Users immediately started pointing out super basic math and logic errors. And worse, people noticed it was acting suspiciously like a ChatGPT 3.5 wrapper. And right at that exact highly vulnerable moment, OpenAI casually drops GPT-4o with native flawless support for over 50 languages, including major Indian dialects. Just like that, Krutrim's big built for India advantage completely evaporated overnight.
Let's get into why this happened in Section 3, the billion-dollar math problem.
The core reason this full-stack dream became absolutely unsustainable comes down to some pretty brutal math. Look at these numbers. Industry leaders estimate that right now, just training a frontier model on the low end costs a minimum of $100 million. Anthropic, one of the big global competitors, is estimated to be spending $6.8 billion on compute alone in 2025. $6.8 billion. Now look at Krutrim. They brought $50 million in outside funding to this table. You see the problem, right? You just cannot fund a multi-billion-dollar global compute war on a localized startup budget. It's economically impossible. And because they didn't have flawless execution to justify raising more of that cash, the global capital markets just completely dried up on them. Major foreign investors, we're talking SoftBank, massive Middle Eastern funds, they looked at the global landscape and basically concluded that, at least at the foundation model layer, India was a loser in the AI race. The massive patient pools of capital you need to sustain a multi-year R&D burn rate, those were all being funneled straight into US-based AI giants.
And that takes us to Section 4, internal chaos and chip failures.
That total lack of global capital directly kneecapped their second huge bet, building sovereign hardware. Look, they did acquire a startup called Bodhi Computing to handle the chip design, and they partnered with ARM for the core architecture. But step 3 on this list? That's a massive supply chain brick wall. You can't just stroll into TSMC in Taiwan and say, hey, print me some cutting-edge AI chips, please. TSMC requires gargantuan volume commitments and huge upfront cash that Krutrim simply didn't have. Now compound those financial and supply chain walls with a really severe internal collapse. Insiders described a totally chaotic environment. We're talking multiple erratic strategic pivots burning through capital with very little to show for it. And the pressure to deliver on these absolutely impossible promises created a deeply toxic work culture. Tragically, this culminated in the suicide of a 38-year-old engineer connected to their broader network. It's a sobering reminder of the human cost of this hyper-competitive race. Ultimately, the intense pressure and total lack of strategic focus led to a massive exodus of their senior technical leadership by late 2025, including the founding head of Krutrim AI itself.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 5, the Sovereign Cloud Pivot. Staring down the barrel of a complete collapse of their original roadmap, late 2025 forced a harsh but highly pragmatic realignment. Krutrim officially hit pause on the foundation models and the custom silicon. Instead, they pivoted entirely to become a sovereign AI cloud provider. What does that mean? It means offering localized data storage and enterprise infrastructure that strictly complies with India's new digital personal data protection rules. Think about it. Indian banks, telecoms, hospitals, government agencies, they are increasingly mandated to keep their data onshore rather than shipping it off to American giants like AWS or Azure.
And here's why this pivot is actually brilliant. It wasn't just throwing in the towel. It was a highly calculated move to capture a massive wave of government funding. The Indian government launched this India AI mission with a budget of over 10,000 crore rupees, and crucially, over 4,500 crores of that is specifically earmarked to subsidize compute for local cloud providers. So Krutrim realized, wait, we can acquire this subsidized compute and then turn around and sell it to domestic enterprises who are desperate for compliant, local infrastructure.
By stepping away from the absolute cash incinerator that is foundation model training, Krutrim actually found a highly monetizable path forward. They can take all those painful lessons they learned and use them to supply GPU compute, focus on infrastructure, the hardware needed for the actual running of the models, and provide deployment tools. Honestly, it's a much simpler, highly lucrative, state-backed enterprise play. It's the classic sell shovels during a gold rush strategy.
Which brings us to our final section, the great sovereign AI debate.
Because Krutrim's absolute roller coaster of a journey puts us right at ground zero of a massive philosophical debate happening among tech leaders right now. On one side, you've got pragmatists like Nandan Nilekani. His view? Let Silicon Valley bleed their billions training the base models. We don't need to do that. India should just be the use case capital, leveraging its massive developer base to build the actual profitable applications on top of that cheap, rented infrastructure. But on the flip side, you have leaders like former Infosys CEO Vishal Sikka. He argues that if the entire future of the economy runs on foundation models, well, if you're renting your foundation from a foreign entity, you never truly have digital sovereignty. You are always going to be at their mercy.
Krutrim tried to achieve that total full-stack sovereignty, and the brutal, unforgiving math of the market forced them to retreat to the infrastructure layer. It basically proves, at least for the moment, that Sam Altman's blunt warning from 2023 was devastatingly accurate. So I'm going to leave you with this. How does the rest of the world compete in an AI race they literally cannot afford to run? Should a nation bleed billions just to own the base layer, or do you surrender the foundation so you can focus on winning the application war? Think about that as we watch this next phase of the AI revolution play out. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.